What happens when a country music legend walks onto a talk show set and completely dismantles everything the hosts thought they knew about cancel culture legacy and what it means to stand by your convictions? What happens when that conversation gets so heated, so brutally honest that one of the most outspoken voices in daytime television decides she's had enough? Today, we're breaking down the explosive interview that ended with Joy Behar walking off The View for good. But before we get into it, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me what you think about all this because trust me, you're going to have opinions. The studio audience was buzzing with the usual energy as Billy Ray Cyrus walked onto the stage. He wasn't there to promote a new album or talk about his famous family. He was there because he'd made some comments in a podcast interview that had gone viral. Comments about artistic integrity, about refusing to apologize for past work, and about how the entertainment industry had lost its backbone. The View had invited him on to discuss it, and Joy Behar was ready. "Billy Ray, welcome to The View," Joy said, her tone already carrying that edge of skepticism she was known for. "So, you've been making some waves lately with your thoughts on cancel culture and how artists should never apologize for their work. Let me ask you this. Do you really believe that artists should never be held accountable for anything they create?" Billy Ray settled into his chair, that easygoing demeanor masking something more serious underneath. "Well, Joy, I appreciate you having me, but I think you're framing it wrong right out of the gate. Accountability and forced apologies are two different things. If I create something and it doesn't land well, I can acknowledge that. But what I won't do is pretend I didn't mean it when I did or apologize for expressing something genuine just because it makes people uncomfortable." Joy leaned forward. "But Billy Ray, we live in a society. And in a society, don't we have a responsibility to consider how our words and our art affect other people, especially when you have a platform as big as yours? We do live in a society." "You're right about that," Billy Ray responded, his voice steady. "But when did living in a society start, meaning that every single person has to think the same way? When did it mean that if somebody's feelings get hurt, the person who spoke has to get on their knees and beg forgiveness? I grew up in Kentucky, and we were taught that words have meaning, but we were also taught that people are allowed to disagree." Whoopi Goldberg jumped in from the other end of the table. "But Billy Ray, there's disagreement and then there's harm. When someone with your influence says something that marginalizes a group of people, that's not just a disagreement anymore." Billy Ray turned to face Whoopi directly. "And who decides what's harmful? Whoopi, you, the loudest voices on social media. Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like we've created this system where a small group of people get to decide what everyone else is allowed to say, think, or create. And if you step outside those lines, you're done. Your career is over. You're erased. That doesn't sound like society to me. That sounds like something else entirely." The audience stirred, some murmuring in agreement, others clearly uncomfortable. Joy wasn't backing down. "So, what you're saying is that there should be no consequences for anything anyone says, that we should just let people spew whatever hateful rhetoric they want, and we all have to smile and accept it." "That's not what I said, and you know it," Billy Ray replied, his voice getting firmer. "What I'm saying is that we've lost the ability to have conversations, real conversations. Everything now is about who can be the most offended, who can shut down the other person fastest. You want to talk about my comments on that podcast? Let's talk about them. But don't sit here and tell me I need to apologize for having a perspective that's different from yours." Joy's expression hardened. "Your perspective, as you call it, included saying that the entertainment industry has become weak because people actually care about not hurting others. You said that we've traded talent for sensitivity. Do you not see how dismissive that is of real progress we've made?" "Progress," Billy Ray repeated, letting the word hang in the air. "You call it progress. I call it something different. I've been in this business for decades, Joy. I've seen real talent get pushed aside because they didn't fit the narrative. I've watched artists censor themselves before they even create because they're terrified of the mob. That's not progress, that's fear. And art that comes from fear isn't art, it's propaganda." Sarah N. tried to moderate. "Billy Ray, I think what Joy is trying to say is that maybe there's a middle ground here. Maybe we can have artistic freedom and also be mindful of how our work impacts people. Sarah, I respect that, Billy Ray said, nodding toward her. And I agree. There's nuance here. But the problem is nuance is dead. We don't do middle ground anymore. You're either with the program or you're against it. And I'm just saying I'm not with any program that tells me I can't speak my mind or create from my heart. Joy interjected again, her voice rising. Speaking your mind is one thing, Billy Ray, but when you have millions of fans, many of them young people, don't you think you have a responsibility to set a good example? To show them that it's okay to evolve, to admit when you're wrong. Billy Ray's jaw tightened slightly. A good example, Joy. The best example I can set for young people is to show them that you can stand on your own 2 feet, that you don't have to bend every time the wind blows. My daughter, my son, they've both been through the ringer in this industry. And you know what I tell them, be true to yourself. Don't let anyone tell you who to be or what to think. That's the example I want to set, even if being true to yourself means being hurtful. Joy pressed. Define hurtful. Billy Ray shot back, because it seems to me that nowadays anything that challenges someone's worldview is labeled as hurtful. I'm not talking about going out of your way to attack people. I'm talking about expressing an opinion, telling a story, creating something that comes from your soul. If that hurts someone's feelings, I'm sorry they feel that way, but I'm not going to stop being who I am. The tension in the studio was palpable. Now, the other hosts were exchanging glances, trying to figure out how to navigate what was quickly becoming one of the most contentious interviews in the show's history. Joy, however, seemed energized by the conflict. So you're basically saying that your right to express yourself trumps everyone else's right to feel safe and respected. No, Joy, that's not what I'm saying. And I wish you'd stop putting words in my mouth, Billy Ray said, his patience clearly wearing thin. Everyone has the right to feel however they want to feel, but your feelings don't get to dictate my reality. Your discomfort doesn't mean I have to change. We used to understand this. We used to be able to hear something we didn't like and just move on. Now it's like everyone's looking for a reason to be offended, looking for someone to tear down. Joy laughed, but there was no humor in it. Oh, so now people who speak up about discrimination and prejudice are just looking for reasons to be offended. Billy Ray, do you hear yourself? This is exactly the kind of rhetoric that allows real harm to continue. And this is exactly the kind of conversation that proves my point. Billy Ray countered. We can't even have a disagreement without you accusing me of enabling harm. I haven't said anything hateful. I haven't attacked anyone. All I've done is suggest that maybe, just maybe, we've gone too far in one direction. But that's not allowed anymore, is it? Any pushback, any questioning of the narrative, and you're immediately labeled as the enemy. The audience was completely silent now, every eye fixed on the exchange happening before them. Joy shook her head, her frustration visible. You're not the enemy, Billy Ray, but you're certainly not helping, and frankly, I'm tired of having this same conversation with people who refuse to see the bigger picture. The bigger picture is that words matter, actions matter, and when you have influence, you have to use it responsibly. Responsibly. According to who? Billy Ray asked, leaning forward now. That's what I keep asking, and nobody seems to want to answer. Who gets to define what's responsible? You, the media, Twitter. Because I'll tell you what I think is responsible. I think it's responsible to teach people to think for themselves, to question things, to not just accept what they're told because everyone else is saying it. Alyssa Farah Griffin, who had been quiet up until now, spoke up. Billy Ray, I actually think I understand where you're coming from on some level. I've been in situations where I've had to defend unpopular positions, but don't you think there's a difference between encouraging independent thought and dismissing legitimate concerns that people have? Billy Ray turned to her. Alyssa, I appreciate that. And yes, there is a difference, but here's my question to you. When does a legitimate concern become an excuse to silence someone? When does protecting people's feelings become more important than protecting people's right to speak? Because it seems to me we've crossed that line and most people are too scared to say it. Nobody's trying to silence you, Joy interjected sharply. You're literally on national television right now saying whatever you want. You have a platform. You have a career. You're doing just fine. So this whole victim narrative about being silenced is ridiculous. Billy Ray smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Joy, just because I'm sitting here doesn't mean the silencing isn't real. How many people do you think are watching this right now, agreeing with me but would never say so out loud because they're afraid of what would happen to them? How many artists are sitting in studios right now, watering down their work, changing their lyrics, editing their scripts because they know if they don't, they'll be destroyed? That's the silencing I'm talking about. It's not always loud. It's not always obvious, but it's happening. Joy leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. Or maybe Billy Ray. Just maybe those artists are choosing to be more thoughtful and inclusive. Maybe they're growing. Maybe they're realizing that the world doesn't revolve around them and they need to say whatever pops into their heads. Thoughtful and inclusive, Billy Ray repeated slowly. Those are nice words, Joy, real nice. But what they really mean in practice is conform else. And I don't care how you dress it up. Conformity isn't growth, it's surrender. Sunani host jumped in, her voice measured but firm. Billy Ray. As an attorney and someone who's fought for civil rights, I have to push back on this idea that asking people to be respectful and considerate is conformity. There are communities that have been marginalized for generations. And when we ask people in positions of power and privilege to be mindful of that, it's not about control, it's about equity. Sonny, I respect your background. I really do, Billy Ray said. But equity doesn't mean everybody thinks the same way. It doesn't mean we all have to walk on eggshells afraid of saying the wrong thing. I grew up poor. I grew up in a place where people didn't have much. And you know what we had? We had grit. We had the ability to hear things we didn't like and not fall apart. We had thick skin. And I think we've lost that, Joy scoffed. Thick skin. Billy Ray. Do you realize how privileged it is to tell people to just develop thick skin when they're facing real discrimination, real violence, real systemic oppression? That's easy to say when you're not the one being targeted. And it's easy to claim oppression when you're sitting in a television studio making millions of dollars talking about how oppressed you are. Billy Ray fired back. Look, I'm not saying real discrimination doesn't exist. I'm not saying people haven't suffered. But what I am saying is that we've reached a point where claiming victimhood has become currency. And the more you can claim you've been hurt, the more power you have. That's not progress. Joy. That's manipulation. The studio went completely silent. Even the crew members behind the cameras seemed frozen, unsure of what was happening. Joy's face had gone red, her eyes blazing. Did you just accuse me of manipulating people by talking about discrimination? Did you really just say that? I said we've created a system that incentivizes victimhood, Billy Ray clarified, his voice calm but unwavering. I'm not talking about you specifically, but if the shoe fits, Joy, then maybe that's something worth examining. Joy stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. No, you know what? I'm done. I'm done with this conversation. I'm done with people like you who come on here and act like caring about others is somehow weakness, and I'm done pretending that this kind of rhetoric deserves a platform. Whoopi tried to intervene. Joy, let's just take a breath here. No, Whoopi. I'm not taking a breath, Joy snapped. I've been doing this show for years, and I've interviewed a lot of people with a lot of different viewpoints, but there's a difference between having a different viewpoint and actively promoting the idea that empathy and consideration are bad things. And I'm not going to sit here and legitimize it. Billy Ray remained seated, watching her calmly. See, this is what I'm talking about. The second someone challenges the narrative, the second someone doesn't fall in line, it becomes about legitimizing or platforming. You can't just disagree with me, Joy. You have to make it about me being dangerous, about me promoting harm. That's the playbook, and everyone watching knows it. Joy pointed at him, her hand shaking slightly. You don't get to tell me what I know. You don't get to sit there and act like you're some brave truth teller when all you're doing is defending a system that's worked perfectly fine for people like you. It's worked for you, Billy Ray. You've had your success. You've had your moment. But for a lot of people, that system has been a nightmare. And those people finally have a voice. And now people like you are upset because you're actually being asked to think about someone other than yourselves for once. I've thought about plenty of people other than myself, Billy Ray said quietly. I've raised kids. I've helped friends. I've given to communities. I've used my platform to shine light on causes I believe in. But I've done it because I wanted to, not because someone demanded it, not because I was afraid of what would happen if I didn't. There's a difference between compassion and compulsion, Joy. And right now, we're living in a world of compulsion. Sarah tried again to de-escalate. Maybe we can all agree that both things can be true. We can value free expression and also value kindness and consideration. Kindness and consideration, sure, Billy Ray agreed. But when kindness becomes a weapon, when consideration becomes a leash, then we've lost the plot. And that's where we are. You can't say what you really think anymore. You can't create what you really feel anymore. Everything has to be filtered through this lens of, will this offend someone? And if the answer is yes, then it can't exist. That's not kindness, Sarah. That's tyranny dressed up in nice words. Joy laughed bitterly. Tyranny. You think being asked to treat people with respect is tyranny? Billy Ray, you have no idea what real tyranny looks like. Real tyranny is not having a voice at all. Real tyranny is being silenced because of who you are, not what you said. And the fact that you can sit here and compare basic human decency to tyranny shows exactly how out of touch you are. Maybe I'm out of touch, Billy Ray said, his voice steady. Or maybe I just remember a time when we trusted people to be adults, when we trusted people to hear different opinions and make up their own minds. When art was allowed to be messy and complicated, and even offensive sometimes, because that's what art is, it's a mirror. And sometimes mirrors show us things we don't want to see. But now we're smashing every mirror that doesn't show us exactly what we want to see. And then we're wondering why everything feels so fake. Alyssa spoke up again. I think the concern, Billy Ray, is that when those mirrors, as you call them, reflect harmful stereotypes or dangerous ideas, they can reinforce real-world harm. That's not about being too sensitive. That's about understanding cause and effect. And I think the concern on my side, Billy Ray responded, is that we've become so obsessed with potential harm that we've forgotten about actual freedom. Every single thing any of us does could potentially harm someone somewhere somehow. If that's our standard, then nobody can do anything. We're paralyzed. And I'd rather live in a world where people are free to make mistakes, free to say things I disagree with, free to create things that make me uncomfortable, than live in a world where everyone's walking around terrified of saying the wrong thing. Joy was packing now, clearly agitated. You know what your problem is, Joy said, stopping to face him directly. Your problem is that you think freedom means freedom from consequences. You think you should be able to say whatever you want and nobody should be allowed to respond. But that's not how it works. Freedom goes both ways. You're free to say what you want and we're free to call you out on it. Absolutely. Billy Ray agreed. Call me out all you want. Disagree with me. Tell me I'm wrong. That's the conversation. But what's happening now goes way beyond that. It's not about calling people out anymore. It's about destroying them. It's about making sure they never work again. Making sure their reputation is ruined. Making sure everyone knows they're a terrible person. That's not dialogue, Joy. That's a witch hunt. Sunny shook her head. But Billy Ray, accountability isn't a witch hunt. When someone does something genuinely harmful, there should be consequences. Otherwise, what's the deterrent? What stops people from just continuing to cause harm? The question is what you define as genuinely harmful, Billy Ray said, turning to her. Because I've seen people's lives destroyed over a joke, over an opinion, over something they said 20 years ago when they were a different person. I've seen careers ended because someone decided to dig through old tweets looking for ammunition. Is that your version of accountability? Because it looks a lot more like revenge to me. Joy jumped back in, her voice sharp. Oh, here we go. The old tweets defense. Billy Ray, if someone has a pattern of saying or doing harmful things, why shouldn't that matter? Why should we just ignore their history and pretend it doesn't tell us anything about who they are? I'm not saying ignore it, Billy Ray replied. I'm saying context matters, growth matters, people change, or at least they should be allowed to change. But we've created this environment where one mistake, one poorly worded statement, one moment of imperfection, and you're done forever. There's no forgiveness, there's no second chances, there's no room for being human, and that's terrifying. Whoopi leaned forward, her voice carrying weight. Billy Ray, I've been canceled more times than I can count. I've said things that upset people. I've made mistakes, but I've also learned from them. And I think what people are asking for isn't perfection. It's acknowledgement. It's saying, hey, I see how that hurt you and I'm going to do better. That's not unreasonable. Billy Ray met her eyes. Whoopee. I respect you immensely. And you're right. Acknowledgement is important. But there's a difference between acknowledging something and being forced to gravel. There's a difference between learning and being made to perform your repentance for the masses. And that's what I'm pushing back against. This performative aspect of it all, the way people have to get on social media and issue these carefully worded apologies written by lawyers and PR teams. And even then, it's never enough. There's always someone saying they didn't go far enough. They didn't mean it. They're just trying to save their career. You can't win. So at a certain point, you have to ask yourself, why play the game at all? Joy had stopped packing and was standing behind her chair now, gripping the back of it. Because the game, as you call it, is called living in a civilized society. It's called being part of a community. And in a community, we have standards. We have expectations. And if you can't meet those basic expectations of treating people with dignity and respect, then maybe you don't deserve the platform you have. And who decides those standards? Joy. Billy Ray asked again, his voice rising slightly for the first time. You the mob, because from where I'm sitting those standards seem to change every day. What was acceptable yesterday is a fireable offense today. What was considered progressive last week is problematic this week. There's no consistency. There's no logic. It's just whoever yells the loudest gets to make the rules. And I'm sorry, but I didn't sign up for that. Nobody did. Joy's voice was trembling now, whether from anger or something else. It was hard to tell. You know what, Billy Ray? I've spent my entire career fighting for the things I believe in. I've used my platform to speak up for people who don't have one. I've taken the hits. I've dealt with the criticism. I've put myself out there day after day because I believe it matters. And then people like you come on and act like all of that is just some mob mentality. Like caring about people is somehow naive or weak. And I'm tired of it. I'm so tired of it. The other hosts were silent now, watching this unfold with a mixture of concern and fascination. Billy Ray's expression softened slightly. Joy, I'm not questioning your intentions. I'm not saying you don't care. What I'm saying is that good intentions can lead to bad outcomes. And I think that's what's happened here. Everyone wants to do the right thing. Everyone wants to be on the right side of history. But in that rush, we've created something oppressive. We've created an environment where people are afraid, and fear is never the foundation for anything good. Joy shook her head slowly. No, I don't accept that. I don't accept that asking people to be better, to do better, to think about the impact of their words and actions is creating fear. What creates fear is living in a world where people can say and do hateful things without any pushback. What creates fear is being part of a marginalized community and watching person after person get away with dehumanizing you. That's fear, Billy Ray, not whatever it is you're describing. Then we're at an impasse, Billy Ray said quietly, because I don't think we're going to agree on this. You see one thing, I see another. And you know what? That should be okay. That should be the end of it. We disagree, we shake hands, we move on. But it won't be, will it? Because I've said things here today that people won't like. And there will be clips, and there will be outrage, and there will be calls for whatever network I'm working with to drop me. That's the world we live in now. And I'm just saying maybe we should think about whether that's really the world we want. Joy took a deep breath, and when she spoke again, her voice was eerily calm. You're right about one thing. We're at an impasse. And you know what I've realized sitting here? I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to sit at this table and have these same circular conversations with people who fundamentally don't believe that we have a responsibility to each other. I've given years to this show, years to trying to make a difference. And I look at where we are now and I just don't see the point anymore. Whoopi's eyes widened. Joy, come on now. Let's not do this here. But Joy was already taking off her microphone. No, Whoopi. I need to do this here because this is exactly the kind of moment that shows why I can't do this anymore. We bring people on. We have these debates and nothing changes. People like Billy Ray go back to their lives believing exactly what they believed before, and people watching at home get more entrenched in their positions, and we're all just yelling into the void. I'm done yelling into the void. The studio was in chaos now. Producers were trying to signal from off camera. The other hosts were trying to figure out if this was real or some kind of performance. Billy Ray sat quietly, watching the scene unfold with an unreadable expression. Sarah tried one more time. "Joy, please, let's just take a commercial break and talk about this." Joy shook her head, setting the microphone on the table. "There's nothing to talk about. I've made up my mind. I've been thinking about this for a while, and today just confirmed it. This isn't what I signed up for. This isn't the conversation I want to be part of anymore, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise just to keep the show going." She looked at Billy Ray one last time. "I hope you're happy. I hope this is exactly what you wanted." Someone finally pushed to the breaking point by this endless, exhausting battle over basic human decency. "Congratulations." Billy Ray stood up slowly. "Joy, I didn't come here to push you to any breaking point. I came here to have a conversation. If you're leaving, that's your choice. And I respect it, but don't put that on me. Own your decision." Joy laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Own my decision. I'm standing here owning it right now. I'm walking away from a job I've had for years because I can't stomach one more conversation like this. I can't sit through one more interview where someone tries to convince me that progress is actually oppression and that caring about people is actually tyranny. I just can't." She turned to the other hosts. "I love you all, I really do, but I can't be here anymore." And with that, Joy Behar walked off the set of The View. The cameras kept rolling, capturing the stunned silence, the confused faces of the remaining hosts, and Billy Ray Cyrus standing awkwardly in the middle of it all. Whoopi finally broke the silence, her voice strained. "Well, I think we're going to need to take a break. We'll be right back." But everyone watching knew they wouldn't be. Not really. Something had fundamentally shifted, and there was no going back from it. Billy Ray slowly sat back down, looking at the remaining hosts. "I didn't mean for that to happen." Alyssa spoke softly. "What did you mean to happen?" He thought for a moment. "I meant to have an honest conversation. I meant to say what I really think instead of what people want to hear." Maybe that was naive. Maybe in this world, honesty is too much to ask for. Sonny looked at him with something that might have been pity or might have been frustration. "The problem, Billy Ray, is that your version of honesty feels like an attack to a lot of people. And maybe that's the disconnect. Maybe what you see as truth, other people see as harm." Maybe Billy Ray acknowledged. Or maybe we've just reached a point where we can't hear each other anymore, where every word is a weapon and every conversation is a battle. And if that's where we are, then I don't know how we get back. The show cut to commercial, but the damage was done. Joy Behar had quit The View on live television, and the interview with Billy Ray Cyrus that sparked it would be replayed, analyzed, and debated for weeks to come. Some would say Joy had overreacted, that she couldn't handle a difference of opinion. Others would say Billy Ray had been disrespectful, that he'd pushed too far, but everyone agreed on one thing. They'd witnessed something unprecedented, something that perfectly captured the fractured state of discourse in America. So, what do you think? Did Billy Ray cross a line, or was Joy too quick to walk away? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe because we're going to keep breaking down all the fallout from this explosive moment. What would you have done if you were in Joy's position?